Prince Harry is about to have a very rough February in the lead up to Meghan Markle's upcoming series with Love. Meghan, because he's not feeling the love from the United States, as his immigration status has definitely been a source of contention in the courts. And although Donald Trump has promised not to deport Prince Harry because being married to Meghan Markle apparently is punishment enough because she's quote unquote terrible, Prince Harry actually might be up on some immigration charges, specifically related to his drug use and whether or not he lied on his visa application. Now, this is all very, you could say, nebulous in some ways. We don't know his visa status. There are a couple visa statuses he could be under, including like diplomatic, which would be very serious, I think, in the US public should know. But really, at the end of the day, all of this comes down to Harry, you never needed to write spare, buddy. Spare might be the thing that sinks you. It's destroyed his relationship with his family. It's damaged his public reputation. And now he might lose his new home. And you just kind of got to look at the whole situation and sort of laugh in a way because this didn't have to happen. This did not have to happen. But Harry did something incredibly stupid, probably egged on by his wife, which is that, hey, we need money. A memoir will make you money. So, Harry, go ahead and tell the whole world all about your sob story. But as it turns out, that sob story might be the worst decision he ever made. So we are going to get into what we're looking at for this visa situation, because definitely Harry getting, let's say, up on charges or something from immigration is not how Meghan wants to start her new series, which is likely to flop. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany and I provide compelling royal commentary. So if you guys want to hit that subscribe button, I would absolutely love to have you back. We have an amazing channel here, an amazing community, and I would absolutely love for you to be part of it. All right, so we've talked about this case a little bit, but it's sort of gaining more steam because on Thursday this week, a judge has determined and given the US government a deadline. You have until Thursday to look through Harry's visa documents and decide what can be made public. And I would argue all of it should be made public. And there's sort of a variety of reasons why. Because number one, we need to know what his visa status is. If he has something like a diplomatic visa, he can get away with like certain crimes here and not be prosecuted. And I also wonder, like, if he's on a visa status, he's making private money, he's not working for any government, he has no government behind him, then what the heck is he doing? I just don't quite understand. So this is something that I think needs to be cleared up, especially because he's making money. It'll be interesting to know, depending on his visa status, he might not be legally able to make money in some ways, and everything might be in the name of his wife, which would be absolutely crazy. I don't really think that's the case, but visas, if you don't know, if you are a US citizen, you can go to the United Kingdom, and a United Kingdom citizen can come here for a vacation for up to 90 days without having a visa. You need a visa if you're going to live there permanently and if you're going to receive money from a company. So, for example, celebrities who are British citizens actually have to get a visa to come to the United States to work. I've actually seen this process. I was actually at a Department of State internship for a very short season of time, which is why I know some of this. So, it's something that's very particular. Some countries you actually need a visa just to get into the country. That's not the case with most of Europe, although UK has changed some bits here for some inexplicable reason. Obviously, just a cash grab against tourists. Good job. Good job, Labour government. That sounds like a bright idea. So Harry's whole visa status, I think, is something that the US public deserves to know. And the reason I say that is because obviously we don't need to know what everybody's visa status is. There's actually royals who've lived here, like Princess Madeline of Sweden. I imagine she actually did have a diplomatic visa or a diplomatic passport while she was here in this country living. And the reason I say that is because she actually was still an extension of the Swedish government, because she would go to events and represent Sweden because she was still in good graces with her country and her family. Florida was just a temporary location. It was sort of cool to see her like pop up every once in a while at these random little Swedish events that would happen in Florida. She even went up to Washington, D.C. for a banquet in honor of the Nobels. So she's done quite a few things here. So it makes sense for her to have that particular visa status. We have Marie Chantal and Crown Prince Pavlos of Greece. They probably do not have diplomatic visas because although they are Greek royalty and actually connected to the Danish monarchy as well, because Crown Prince Pavlos, his mother, was a princess of Denmark. The monarchy is now defunct. So there's no real reason for them to have a diplomatic visa or anything to that effect. Does their passport perhaps say Crown Prince Pavlos of Greece? Yes, it probably does. But they don't have any reason to have a diplomatic passport. I think some of their kids were actually born in the United States. They have homes both in the UK and the US. And so they travel quite frequently. Marie Chantal, I don't think she was born in the US. Dad's originally, well, at least he worked in Hong Kong, and that's where he started his duty-free business. Anyways, all that doesn't matter. But Harry's does. And one of the reasons I think we really need to know is because Harry and Meghan are trying to finagle themselves as somehow a prince or princess of America. I will say yet again to Harry and Meghan, the cosplay royals, you can be royals who live here, but you cannot be royalty here. We fought a whole war about this almost 250 years ago now, and we kicked your butts to the curb. So we don't want ya. Nobody wants ya. And in that capacity, you can't be royalty here. You'll notice when you watch Harry and Meghan go about stuff, how they cover sort of their events and stuff. I mean, even looking at the Invictus Games, Meghan traipses around the Invictus Games as if she was royalty. And what I mean by that is that she's having these constant outfit changes. She's dressing in all these different clothing options, and she's hosting very much reminiscence in some ways of royalty, because that's still how they see themselves. But the reality is they do have royal titles, but they're not royalty here. But they seem to definitely angle themselves as if they're like that. And it's like, we don't want you. And even more so over time, we want them less and less every stinking year because they're annoying. And they seem to not understand that while they may have the right to live here, they are instituting themselves or trying to shove themselves into an area we don't want them. And so, because of this visa status, I think we have the right to know this. Looking at this whole situation as well, there's only one entire person to blame for this fiasco, which is negative press they don't need in a year of horrifically awful press, which is the stupidity of Prince Harry and Spare. That's what it comes down to. Harry was stupid enough to write Spare and admit to drug use that maybe he didn't admit to in his visa application. If you remember, sort of the contention around the visa is if you admit drug use, oftentimes you are actually not allowed to come to the United States on a visa. And I believe even Kate Moss is somewhat limited in her travel to the United States because of her past drug use. I believe that's the case. But when it comes to Harry, it's like he very publicly is coming to this country acting like royalty, and then he writes this book. And he goes through all the nitty-gritty details, things he didn't need to do. So in this whole situation, I have zero sympathy for Harry because he's the one who wrote Spare. He's the one who decided that greed and money was more important to him than keeping a shred of his dignity. I mean, again, I will go back to, we now know Prince Harry had a frostbitten penis at his brother's wedding and rubbed cream on his nether regions that smelled and remind him of his mother. Does anybody ever need to know that? No, nobody ever needed to know that. So this whole situation, I'm so sorry, Harry, but you're on your own, bud. Nobody is really going to be really all that sympathetic with him. He's made his bed. He has to lie in it. But apparently he might have a little bit of squishiness from Donald Trump here. So this is an exclusive from the New York Post. And Donald Trump said, I don't want to do that in terms of deporting. I'll leave him alone. He's got enough problems with his wife. She's terrible. I mean, you got to see the burn there. They're burned there. His wife is so terrible. She's such punishment enough that Donald Trump's like, I won't really deport you because your wife, she's just terrible. Nobody likes her. You're stuck with her. We're all, a little bit chuckling behind the scenes. And so good luck with that. But what I will say here is that a lot of people are arguing that Donald Trump won't do anything because, Charles, he has so much respect for Charles and yada, yada, yada. I actually don't think that's true. Now, does Donald Trump have a respect for Charles and the royal family? Yes. But Donald Trump's whole position right now is that if you are here illegally and you have committed a crime, or in this case, potentially Harry did commit a crime. His crime in this particular situation, if this all pans out to be true, is lying on his visa application. So if he lied or had his assistants lie on his visa application about his drug use because somebody told him, if you admit that, they won't let you in, and somehow he forgot it between arriving and writing book Spare, is that if he lied there, he actually has broken the law and he will have to face consequences for that and should face consequences for that. Apparently, some of it is even prison time. Will that happen? I don't know. But Donald Trump said, I won't deport him, but he can have Kristi Noem deport him or whoever's in charge of immigration. I can't remember exactly who that is. But he can tell somebody else, hey, this guy has broken our laws and we need to deport him. Now, when it comes to Charles, people say, oh, but Charles, he'll be so upset. Donald Trump doesn't want to upset him. Well, people may say that about Donald Trump, but he doesn't really have an option here because if Donald Trump is going to stand on his own principles on this issue, he has to enact punishment on Harry if he lied. Because if other people are going to be punished for lying or getting into this country, same thing should hold true for Harry. It's all sort of like working together. And I imagine Meghan is so committed that she wouldn't even dare leave the state. She's so desperate to have American Riviera Orchard or whatever the heck she's going to call her series or products or whatever work, that she would be like, well, honey, good luck. I'm staying here. I could imagine that happening. So even with all the chaos Harry and Meghan have caused, Donald Trump has to stand on his principles if he actually really wants to represent those publicly, because he has promised this, he has enacted this, but Harry might be the litmus test. That might be the big one. It's like, if you stand on your principles, do you deport this guy, even if it's, let's say, something that maybe makes the relationship with the UK a bit more challenging? Because the reality is, although Charles is very well respected, he's not enacting policy. He's not head of government. He's the head of state. So it's more in many ways of a symbolic role. And so Donald Trump could deport Harry, but what is the UK going to do? They're going to whine and cry and complain because they don't want him back either. The sad thing is nobody wants Harry and Meghan. That's a really sad part about this, is you see how much people are like, oh, somebody take them, because nobody wants them. And it's their behavior that has caused this. It is absolutely their behavior that has caused this, because they've been nothing but a global irritation at this point. They're nothing but a global irritation. They irritate people. They are just offer nothing and then just want everybody to be clamoring because Meghan made jam. I made jam this week. Jam is super easy to make. Here's my bottle. It's not perfect. It didn't seal correctly. You can hear that sound. It means it didn't seal correctly, but it's not that hard to make. So Meghan making jam and somehow thinking we're supposed to be impressed by this. We're just not. We're not impressed by them. And so I think a lot of people are like, if Harry leaves the country, they'd be like, yay, we'll help you pack up, bud. We'll help you pack up. And Donald Trump apparently is still also sort of backing this legal action. So it says, according to a source, President Trump has made it very clear that if Harry is found to have not told the truth on his visa application, then he could face prosecution. If Harry answered the drug questions truthfully, that would have triggered a visa waiver process whereby he would have to have been interviewed and given a waiver. If that is the case, the public has the right to know. The source added, President Trump has said he won't deport Harry, but there is no doubt he would support a prosecution. What is interesting is the judge admitted holding a secret meeting with lawyers for the government without telling lawyers representing Heritage. That is highly unusual, if not unprecedented. And it's highly pertinent. The judge has admitted Heritage has the right to see the non-public documents. So this is a mess. This is an absolute mess. But it sort of goes all back to Harry and Meghan, both of them. They're global irritants. And if they didn't come across the pond and start irritating everybody, they might have been fine. If Harry didn't write his book, Spare, maligning his family and telling us all his sordid affairs, we would not know about this. This all really does come back to Harry. And because of that, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for him in this situation. I don't. He decided to write Spare. He decided that was more important to turn a buck than it was to protect his own dignity. And we've seen people like this on social media and in reality TV shows all the time. People who are willing to allow themselves to be made fools of because they're desperate for cash. And that's exactly what Harry and Meghan are. They are desperate for cash. And Spare was probably actually the most lucrative thing for them because it sold really well. And although it's in second printings, like in paperback, I don't think it's probably doing like gangbusters because they oversaturated the market, but made him look really, really successful. And so like they have that to fall back on. They'll always get a bit of residuals from that. Everything else they have touched that was originally gold has turned to coal. They are failing rapidly, and they need to reassess. We've been watching the Invictus games this week a little bit, and it's been obvious to me. I attended the games back in 2016 that the games have taken a big hit. It's not even right to call some of the venues they're using stadiums. They're like microscopic little like conference halls that have been somehow made into sporting arenas. They're small. There's nobody there. I was so shocked yesterday looking at this video of sitting volleyball, and I think it was Nigeria and another team. There was nobody there. Nobody there. Even my high school basketball meets of the girls' team were better attended than the Invictus games. Nobody is attending the individual events. It is failing. Harry says, oh, there's more interest. I want to grow and grow with this. Buddy, you can't grow it anywhere. You can't grow anywhere without an audience. It needs an audience. And I say this again because I think this is so important, especially because taxpayer money is involved. If this was totally privately funded, then hey, do whatever the heck you want. If you want to spend and throw millions of dollars down the tube, I mean, have at it. That's your own fault. But Canadian taxpayers, their monies were put into the Invictus Games. Something that is supposed to, in theory, why you spend a bunch of money to host the Olympics is that you are hoping that enough people come into the city to offset the costs that you spent investing in the games themselves. That's how the Olympic Games work. And sometimes people invest too much. That's why they've sort of moved to more established cities instead of someplace like in Brazil that they did before in Rio. Because what happened in the Rio games and sometimes in Athens and different games is that they invest so much that they can never ever recoup the costs. So they're moving to Paris and Los Angeles because they are bigger cities, much more well established. You don't have to build big facilities because the big facilities already exist. So the money, they don't have to expend quite as much. And then all the people flooding in to watch the Olympics and then the TV rights and everything should offset the cost of putting on the Olympics. That's why taxpayers put their money in. But Harry has wasted other people's taxpayers' dollars, and nobody is attending except for the opening and closing ceremonies. And the reason for that is a concert, which they probably blew out of the bank, begging and pleading big celebrities to come on and giving them a fat paycheck to do it. So imagine if that happened in the United States. If the Invictus Games had chosen Washington, D.C., I would imagine they would have asked for the money and the Defense Department would have gone, no. They desperately need massive infusions of cash. And so Harry, at this point, I think he's sort of a pariah. Like, who wants to invest with this guy? And if he wants to have a career with Invictus, then he needs to try to actually make it work. It's not feasible at this point. And just looking at the whole mess with his visa, you get the sense sometimes Prince Harry thinks the Invictus Games can protect him because, oh, he's doing this great thing for the veterans. So you can't criticize him because of his dead mother and the Invictus Games. Can't criticize the Invictus Games. But I think the track is running out at this point. People are just not as willing to invest in Harry because he has so utterly and completely bungled his post-royal life because, as it turns out, he was never suited to do anything else. And Meghan Markle took him away from the one thing he was actually competent at to try to make it in Hollywood. And as it turns out, both of them are incompetent there too. So this is an epic mess. But when it comes to Harry's visa, I believe we do have the right to know, especially for a guy who's attempting to act as if he is a prince of this country. And we shall see where things go. We'll know on Thursday what might get released. So we'll be following this very closely. I'm anxious to see where this will turn out because originally I wasn't really a fan of Harry's, just being arbitrarily deported. But I think at this point, because of where the administration is, they cannot afford not put him up on prosecution charges if he indeed did lie on his visa application, because they have made their whole platform on that. And unfortunately for Harry, he's going to be wrapped up in that because you don't know where the tides are going to turn when it comes to the White House. So Harry and Meghan, I'm sure, are quaking in their boots, maybe just a smidge. I'm curious if they even know what their assistants put on their visa applications, what interviews Harry had, what he admitted to. I think we do all have the right to know because he is definitely here making a nuisance of himself. And so, guys, thank you so much for watching. I shall talk to you again very soon. Bye.